Hello, it's Dawn Michelle from Boho Tarot, and welcome to another mod with me. Today we are going to be edging my Goddess Dream Oracle with some of my distressed ink stamps. So I was inspired to actually edge this deck after I created a spread in my journal that matched the backs. So I thought I would just take a quick minute and take a look at what the inspiration was and the colors that I chose. So you can see here, this is my April cover page in my tarot journal. So I basically created this design to sort of mimic the back of the cards because the Goddess Dream Oracle is my focused oracle for all of this month. And so I thought it would be fun to really tie that energy in. So once I actually got kind of the drawings done and the inking and the stamping, then I actually went back and added some color with the distressed stamps to kind of mimic the watercolory background we see on the cards. And so for the back of this, I actually used the distressed ink in Antique Linen and Tea Stain. Now, I don't like to use my big distressed ink pads on my decks because it does pretty much chew through them. So I wanted to keep my colors that I use for my journals and my paper crafting separate. So I went out and got a couple of more of the mini ones, which I prefer for edging a deck anyway because they're much smaller and easier to hold on to. Now, when I went to the store, I was able to find the antique linen. I did go to 2 different craft stores in order to try and get the colors that I needed. I probably should have just ordered them on Amazon because I bought these a couple days ago and I would have totally had time to have them ship, but that's okay. I did get the antique linen, which I thought would be a good base color match for this particular deck. And then even though I wanted to kind of pull in the tea stain, I didn't find the package that had the tea stain color in it. So I went with the package that had the wild honey. We're gonna see if that one actually works. If I need to, I can pull in my larger tea stain pad, but again, I really hate to use those on my deck because it just eats through them. So I am hoping to be able to use these little ones. I also have this green color in old paper. They were in a 4-pack, so just in case you were wondering, here's the colors that came in this one. It was the wild honey, the old paper, the weathered wood, and the worn lipstick. I figured these are all colors that I would probably use at some point. And then I grabbed the pack that has the antique linen, and these are all colors that I use all the time, so I'm always happy to have backups of these. And it had the vintage photo, the walnut stain, and the black suit. So I'm really happy to have extras of all of these, but I did primarily get them to work with these 3 colors, and hopefully those should match the deck pretty well. I mean, I could even pull in more colors, but I really wanted to keep it down to just these handful of main colors and to see how it goes. And basically what we're gonna do is my kind of typical what I call antiquing on my deck edges, which basically means that I'm gonna layer up multiple colors after I get my base coat on so that we can get this kind of muted watercolory pattern on the edge of the deck. Hopefully, that is the plan for today. So let's go ahead and clear all this off, make some room, and get started. So the first thing that we're going to do is take and add our base layer of our antique linen, and I'm just gonna go through and color the card. So you'll see here that I'm just kind of running it back and forth along the card edge. The distressed ink is really great in that it doesn't dry instantly, so you get a little bit of time to be able to wipe off any excess that might have overflowed onto your front or back. However, I do find that they stay really well. For the most part, they pretty much stay where you put them, which is fantastic. So I'm just gonna start layering this on. I am still working with the card backs facing me just in case I get any bleed over that I miss. It will be most likely on the back using this angle. And one of the benefits to having a new stamp is that it's nice and full of ink, so it goes on pretty quickly and also has pretty good coverage. Again, keeping in mind that these are distressed stamps, so they're not meant to full coverage. They're meant to just kind of add texture and distressing and layer over other things. So trying to get a full fill on a first pass is asking a lot of these little stamps. But again, that's okay because we're gonna layer these colors on. Okay, I've got a table full of cards. I have done, I don't know, roughly half the deck. I just kind of split them and started on the antique linen layer. And so I'm just gonna gather them up and hopefully we'll take a look. I'm gonna try to be careful because these are the last ones I just did. They are not going to be dry yet, so some of them will appear darker than others. So you can see this, of course, is the side that I've edged so far, and here's the white side. So already I think, I mean, it looks really cool, even just doing this, wrong side. So you can see here, we've got that kind of yellowy color. It will dry a little bit lighter than it's appearing right now because I just finished these. So I wanted to just take a quick break and show you what those look like so you can see half the deck kind of edged in a color and then compared to what it comes with those white sides. So I've got the deck all edged with the antique linen and it took just a few minutes, to be perfectly honest. Because for one, I'm just throwing a base layer on. I'm not trying to completely fill or anything like that. I'm just kind of getting that base antique linen color down. But I think even if you just edge this deck with just this color, I think that would look pretty fantastic. Hopefully that color is picking up on camera because it is quite light. I mean, you can definitely see it when I put it next to something white, right? Or like my table. But I've got basically just that base coat going. So now at this point, we need to go ahead and add our additional layers through our additional colors. So kind of in looking at the back of these cards, hopefully those are not still too wet. But in looking at the back of these cards, what I'm kind of leaning toward is pulling in the green color similar to as it is on the card. So maybe this corner and this corner, which means I'm going to have to pay attention to what I'm doing. Now, normally, a lot of times when I do kind of multiple colors like this, I will basically do a base color, I will do a darker color on the corners, and then maybe do some kind of mid-tone between the two kind of right here, and then that ends up with this little chunk kind of being almost like a little glow. You can see something similar to that if you check out my Anima Mundi mod with me where I trimmed and edged that deck. That's kind of the color scheme or the layout that I followed for that particular one. But I thought maybe this time I'd do something a little bit different. And looking at the back of these cards, I mean, we can definitely see that there's some kind of green blue in these two corners, and these two corners kind of have more of this yellowy color. So I thought it might be interesting to kind of just layer those in that way. So this corners of the deck is going to have some of the green, and these two corners of the deck are going to have some of the wild honey, and then maybe we'll fill in a little bit more or add something else to the center just to kind of pull it all together. So how I generally do this, there's two different ways that you can do this. Now I could take, if I wanted like much fuller saturation, I could actually take the inks, the stamps, and just kind of, you know, edge the corners that I want to edge, and I could go with that. But I don't think I want full saturation. I kind of want to try just a hint of it first. So what I'm gonna do is, first of all, make sure the cards are all going the right way. What we're gonna do is start with the green up in this corner, and I'm going to see how it works if I just lightly rub it on versus actually edging the card. So what I'm going to try to do is basically do an overlay on this. Now in this particular instance, when I'm just doing an overlay, I do a chunk of cards at a time, not a huge chunk because I still need to be able to hold on to them and get them really, really tight, but I will kind of chunk up the cards and do a section at a time. I am going to go through and wipe them all off in between though anyway, just to make sure. I'm also not entirely sure how this particular color goes on, so I want to make sure that I'm kind of careful this first time around and I'm not putting it on super, super thick. So again, the reason why I'm going to do just a light rubbing over the top of it with it just to kind of see how that's going to come out. So I can see here that it kind of goes from here to here. Now it's not going to be on exact on all the cards, and that's fine. So what I'm going to do is, obviously you can see I've just wrapped my finger with a paper towel and I'm going to dab it in the ink, and I'm just going to see how that works if I rub it on, because I don't want full color saturation. Where do I want to go? I want to go about here. Kind of trying to keep a kind of visual mark. I'm basically going to this little flower right here, or close to it. If I wanted more saturation, I could try actually rubbing this along here, which is not always the best idea, but I want to get a little bit darker on the corners here. And it's real important that you kind of keep your cards real tight and together and straight as possible when you're doing this. That I think is going to work well enough. I'm going to take another paper towel here and I'm just going to real quick just wipe those corners down where I ran that along that edge. And making sure we've kind of got that off, and I'm going to kind of just let this group hang out over here, do its thing. We're going to grab another, probably just do this deck in thirds. Grab another third and make sure we're going the same way, and I'm just going to basically repeat the process. Okay, so I have got the corners done with the green, or the corner kind of up into here, it's still kind of wet, on my 3 stacks of cards. And so now what I'm going to do is basically repeat the process. So I'm going to flip the decks around and I'm going to follow that same process and just do this corner right here. So we're going to pop this one open, and I can see that card right there is not wanting to stay in this little group. I am going to kind of move my little thing to another spot because it's starting to tear a hole through. So I want to go about here, and we're going to go, let's go to about that flower right there, that little plant. So we've got to that on that corner. So again, I'm going to go through and just kind of wipe them down and throw them across the table and basically repeat the process, getting the green on that opposite corner now. Okay, so let's see how that turned out. Let's get them all together. Here is the green edge on the one side, which I feel like needs to be a lot darker than it is. Now that I'm looking at it, like, I think I want it to be a lot darker. But before I really kind of dive into maybe just edging this one corner individually to get that better color saturation, I do want to go ahead and figure out where I want to put this wild honey, because I feel like it's going to be a lot brighter, and when I get it on here, then that may change how I want to approach this green, whether I want to darken it up or let it stay a little bit lighter so it's not in quite so much competition with the wild honey. So that's kind of my thought process, even though I'm thinking that the green could be a little bit darker. So I'm just going to kind of divide these up into thirds again, and we're going to take a look at where do we want this. And this color, I gotta be honest, makes me a little bit nervous because look how bright that is. It does make me a little bit nervous. I think maybe we'll try just this one corner up here first. So we're going to start with this one little corner and see how it goes, because I'm really not sure how bright this is going to be when I get it on here. Let's maybe try just Oh yeah, that's really bright. So we're just gonna go real easy with this one. And kind of just run it around this corner. Because now I don't know if you can see here, but I've kind of got this like orange sitting right here on this corner, which is kind of okay. Kind of okay. I mean, I just want a little bit more here. But this is quite a bit brighter than the green, so I want to just go real easy with it. Be really, really careful. That wild honey, I think, came out pretty well, although it is much more yellow than I really was hoping for, although I think it is a good match. But basically what happened, that first little section of cards that I did, I ended up doing, you know, too much right there, and you can kind of see that. Now, when I shuffle this deck, it's going to mix in better, and so you're not going to be able to see it as well. I generally don't like to do this and then not wipe them down, but we're going to do it real quick. Now that I've kind of got that, the green might actually not be too bad because the yellow is kind of helping that green pop. I want to do a little bit of that yellow color. Actually, I changed my mind. I don't want to do the yellow color. I want to pull in some of the tea dye, and because I'm not actually edging with the tea dye and I'm using a paper towel, I'm okay with using that because I'm not going to be running it across my card. I'm going to go ahead and pull the tea dye into this corner, and then I will probably work it as well and through some of the other ones, and then maybe come back with some of the antique linen just so that we can kind of get things melded a little bit together. Putting that lighter color over again kind of helps it pop out of the center, and also to pull those other colors, kind of just merge them in together a little bit more. So I'm just going to basically repeat my process, and I want to make sure I've got the right corner. So there's my yellow, my green, and my other green. So I'm going in this corner right here. Again, pushing my cards together really tightly. And we're gonna put this tea dye in here, which is again another pretty dark one. And I did it again and got that really kind of dark area to the corners and the sides. Then wipe it all down and repeat across my other 2 stacks. So some of them are the wrong way. So probably pay better attention than I did, because now I've got some of them are yellow on this end, and some are the tea stain, and some are more yellow on this side and tea stain. That's okay. It's not like it's not a total loss. Not a total loss at all. What I am going to try to do is throw some more stamps on the floor, and I'm gonna add some more of this green in because I just don't feel like there's quite enough of it, and I'm gonna try to just kind of do it all at once. This is the only way, or the only time I would ever recommend doing what I'm doing right this moment, is when you're working with the distress stamps, because I have time to wipe it off in between. Otherwise, you would be getting bleed in between your cards. So I'm just gonna kind of smooth out where I put all that in. And real quick, I'm just going to wipe these all off. So yeah, that's quite a bit darker. I like that better. I think I want to do the same thing to this side, because I'd really like to darken that up quite a bit. So there is that. So what I want to do, I think, is kind of pull a little bit more of this antique linen. I just kind of want to brighten it up a little bit in the center. So I'm going to basically repeat the process and put it in here. Just kind of try to run that together a little bit and try to find a place where I haven't getting ink all over my table. So at this point now I'm just kind of trying to blend it a little bit is basically what I'm doing. So I'm gonna just go through around all 4 sides real quick. And I'm just using the antique linen to kind of blend all those other colors together so that I don't have like harsh lines. And then that will probably be the last layer we will do. And then we'll take a look at what it looks like all shuffled together. Okay, so at this point I've got the deck edged, and actually the process went pretty quickly. This whole thing took less than an hour to do. Granted, it is an oracle, and I am more apt to do these sort of more elaborate edgings on my oracle decks just because there's less cards and it tends to go faster, although I have done similar things on tarot decks as well. But let's see what we've got. I haven't shuffled them yet, so you can see we've got the green here, and we've got what ended up being the tea dye and the wild honey on like 2/3 of the deck and the tea dye on 1/3 of the deck because I had one of my thirds turn the wrong way because I was watching videos and not paying attention to what I was doing. But that's okay because it is a very minor difference, and I think once I shuffle them together, it's really not gonna matter. Then we've got the green on this side, and again, that same deal, but over here we have the 2/3 is in the tea dye and 1/3 of it is in the wild honey. They're not quite dry yet. I do wanna give them a shuffle so we can see as I mix them in what those two colors do. And just kind of as I thought, they're just kind of mixing in beautifully. So look at that. We've got those two colors mixed together in on this corner. I need to get my thumb out of the way. So we have the green, the antique linen, and then moving into that wild honey and tea dye. Again, the same kind of effect going on around here. And then to the other side. So once I kind of mixed them in together, it really didn't matter that I had done 1/3 of the deck the wrong way because they're mixed in, and that wild honey and that tea dye is going together pretty well. Again, I did the antique linen again over the center. That was my base coat, but I did do it again as a final layer just in the center to kind of merge and blend the colors that I had going on the two corners so that it looks a little bit more seamless and you don't get quite so much of the line effect. But check that out. I think that is a pretty great match. I'm really happy with the way it turned out. I think it looks fantastic. Let's keep my cards all going in the right direction. And of course, as I mentioned, my inspiration was my cover page for my April tarot journal. So this was my cover page, which again matches the backs. I could have even maybe tried to incorporate that pop of red in there, but I didn't want to overdo it, right? I don't want the edges of my deck to kind of overtake the design on the back or the fronts. I want to just kind of support it to help it look finished. It's just pretty, it's just fun, but I think I have achieved that same kind of color palette. I think it looks beautiful with the card backs itself, and I am really pleased with how it came out. So this has been a really fantastic experience. I really enjoyed modding this deck. It was a lot of fun, but it was a really quick and easy process too, because I'm, again, not working with a ton of cards, but I was also doing kind of that block shading where I'm doing chunks of the deck at a time. That's not something I would recommend with marker, but it does work quite well with the distressed ink because, again, that is an ink that's not meant to completely fill. It's meant to just kind of distress things like we see here as I've done on this paper. So for kind of overlaying it on top of your cards like that really does help it to kind of blend together, and it is something that you can do several cards at once because it doesn't dry instantly and it doesn't have that full saturation, so you can kind of let it kind of feather into it a little bit easier, and it works beautifully for that. So there we go, another fun edging done with one of my favorite decks. I would love to know if you have this deck and what your experiences are with it, so please feel free to share with me in the comments below. Thank you for joining me today. You'll find links for everything featured here in the description box below. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to seeing you again soon for more creative tarot for an inspired life.